Good afternoon. My name is Sachin Garg, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you on today's first webinar on best practices. Very often, a very good quality improvement is referred as a best practice. And today we have none other than quality guru of India, Mr. Suresh Lulla, demystifying this subject for us. Mr. Lulla founded Qimpro Consultants 3 decades ago and as the first dedicated quality management consultancy firm in the country. He has been personally coached and mentored by Dr. J.M. Juran, the man who taught Japan to manage for quality. He is a veteran professional with over 50 years of experience as a management consultant, speaker, trainer, coach, author, and storyteller. 3 years ago, Mr. Lulla started converting his experiences with his clients into what Qimpro calls as quality fables, short narratives under 500 words each. I have read all 75 quality fables, and each time I reread any fable, I learn more. Before I hand over to Mr. Lulla, I would like to inform you that a recording of this webinar will be shared on Qimpro's website, and the link will be posted on their LinkedIn page. Please do follow them on their LinkedIn page or send an invite to Jigisha to add you. I hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes. And with that, over to you, Mr. Lulla.
Thank you, Sachin, for your kind words. A warm welcome to all my friends who have registered for the webinar. This is the first Qimpro webinar, and the title is Demystifying Best Practices. Much of the contribution has also come from Sachin Garg. He made suggestions, and I have tried to incorporate them in this presentation. I have 3 beliefs. You know, a belief, when you repeat it often enough, it becomes a fact. And so here's my first belief. Best practices are not standard practices. A common usage of the term best practices is in the context of standard practices. Standard practices only lead to mediocrity. So I'd like to demystify this. Best practices deliver breakthrough results. I have a third belief, which is interwoven with these two. The most underemployed asset of an organization is the creativity dormant in people. I'd like to expand those 3 beliefs through a quality fable. Mind you, a fable is facts, substantially facts, but there is a degree of fiction. The quality fable that I've selected demonstrates that right brain creative thinking can deliver simplification. Simplification is nothing but innovation. Left brain logical thinking usually delivers complexity. So when we compare the two, and we have it in abundance, we are total. Best practices, swapping the signboards. This is about a man who had a very active right brain. He was good at music. He was good at art. He was good at cooking. He also had a good left brain. He played bridge and he also flew aircraft. The person I refer to was also chairman of Tata Steel, Mr. Rusi Modi. Mr. Rusi Modi followed a practice of town hall meetings, periodic town hall meetings. On one of my consulting visits to Tata Steel in Jamshedpur, a town hall meeting was scheduled. Mr. Modi invited me to the town hall. He arranged for a seat in the first row on a sofa, and besides me was Ravi Shastri, the cricket coach for Tata Steel. There were 65,000 people on this football field, and on the stage were about a dozen directors, each of them absolute top management of Tata Steel. When the union leader arrived, Mr. Modi jumped up and embraced him and declared the meeting open. One of the workers stood up and he complained. The workers' toilet was always dirty, whereas the executives' toilet was spick and span. He said this practice had been forever at Tata Steel. A disturbed Mr. Modi called the head of housekeeping who was on the stage and asked him, how much time will it take to set it right? The logical left brain housekeeping head said, 1 month. Mr. Modi said, I would rather do it in a day. Is there a carpenter present? A Sardar carpenter came to the stage, and Mr. Modi instructed him, swap the signboards. By 3 p.m., the signboards were swapped, and the executives had the dirty toilet, and the workers had the clean toilet. The next day, Mr. Modi called the same carpenter. He instructed him, change the signboards back every fortnight. It was a win-win for the workers and Mr. Modi. Now, what are the lessons we learned? Leaders engaged the creative right brain for innovative solutions. You saw it in Mr. Modi. The innovative solution was very simple. Swap the signboards. To make it permanent, you need to have a plan, do, check, act system in place. He made a plan, swapped the signboards. He made the carpenter do it. And he requested the carpenter to switch the signboards every fortnight. Through action, the chairman lived up to the expectations of 65,000 workers. The chairman and the union leaders treated each other with dignity. And since this was a quality culture assignment for me, Mr. Modi had done my work. Good housekeeping practices are a prerequisite for building a quality culture. With this story in the background, let's look at what a formal definition for a best practice is. A best practice is a method or technique, switch the signboards, that has consistently shown results. We saw superior housekeeping to those achieved by other means. The other means were where the housekeeping director would have gone into a problem-solving mode, looking at quality improvement methodology from the symptomatic evidence to the root cause and solution. And that is used as a benchmark. Within the Tata Steel Group, this practice became a benchmark for housekeeping. Not only that, Tata Motors across the road also adopted the same. Let's have a simple definition. A best practice is efficient and effective. Efficient in terms of time, effective in terms of the customer. In this case, the internal customer. Now let's look at organizations. Organizations are made up of processes. And these processes are so complicated by left-brain thinkers that it's a bowl of spaghetti. Looks like that. Managerial practices are the spice in the spaghetti. Most managerial practices are standard. However, some are weak. These weak practices are the subject for improvement. The balance are best. Graphically, we have weak practices, standard, and best. Housekeeping at Tata Steel had many standard practices, but that of the toilets was weak. Now, the option to the head of housekeeping was to convert this weak practice into a project, improvement project. That is why he optimistically said 1 month when he meant to say 2 months. The process of solving a chronic problem, symptom to cause to remedy. Mr. Modi had a complete left and right brain and a lot of compassion for workers. He thought disruptively and created a best practice. Swap the signboards. Best practices are benchmarked. Take the case of Aravind Eye Hospital. Aravind Eye Hospital is a global benchmark for throughput in cataract surgery. Located in Madurai, it has ordinary people running the hospital. It has rather humble people as doctors, and the patients come from relatively humble backgrounds. They couldn't afford a cataract surgery. The head of Aravind Eye Hospital, or the founder, chose to improve the productivity of cataract surgeries and thereby reduce the cost. Who did he benchmark? He benchmarked an organization that had similar characteristics. People with less experience, people who produce standardized results every time, all the time. He benchmarked McDonald's. He also benchmarked Pizza Hut. Borrowing the ideas of throughput from these two organizations, he adapted them, he innovated them for his own hospital. Today, Aravind Eye Hospital is a global benchmark. Take another example of a hospital in Singapore. Hospitals in Singapore are state-of-the-art. Nevertheless, this hospital had an epidemic of infection in elderly people in the ICU. On examination, the ICU conformed to every international standard. Inspecting the operation theater, one also found that it conformed to international standards. So where was the infection happening? It happened on the journey from the operation theater to the ICU. The distance was a little bit longer. Infection was happening only to elderly who had poor resistance. Now the hospital couldn't rebuild the OT location and the ICU, but it could reduce the time of the gurney from the operation theater to the ICU. Who did they benchmark? Formula One pit stop. They borrowed ideas and they were able to reduce the journey from the operation theater all the way to the ICU. They further benchmarked with ballerinas because the gurney was much smaller than a Formula One car. They accomplished their objective. They borrowed practices from without the industry. Organizations that wish to accomplish breakthrough results must therefore tap the right brain for creativity through creativity labs. Most people believe that they lack creativity and that they are essentially logical people. This creativity was the most active when you were born. Unfortunately, the schooling system rewarded and recognized the logical part of you. You lost practice with creativity. It became dormant. So we need creativity labs to spark the creativity in you for designing innovative best practices. The creativity tools are all based on brainstorming, and a combination of these can deliver breakthrough results. I'm now available for question and answers.
Thank you, Mr. Lulla. It is always a pleasure to learn from your experience. And I hope that the other participants on this webinar have also enjoyed learning from your insights. May I request all the participants to post their questions using the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Well, Mr. Lulla, one of the first questions which has been received from participant is, what is the difference between an improvement and a best practice?
Good question. An improvement is an incremental change where you proactively challenge the standard that you're working with. It improves the efficiency of a process. By efficiency, I mean in terms of time and wasteful activities and actual physical waste. It leads to faster, better, cheaper results. A best practice, on the other hand, is very disruptive. It's an out-of-box idea. It's an innovative idea. And a best practice is born out of creative thinking. Now, it may come naturally to you, as it did with Mr. Modi, or you could be part of a creativity lab that ignites your right brain into developing a best practice. I recall an assignment with a bank. I won't mention the bank's name right now, but it was in Chennai. And here we had pinstripe suit people coming into the classroom for a creativity lab. They felt they were out of place because they were number people and logical thinkers. The creativity tools, for example, brainwriting, shocked them into thinking out of the box. Imaginary brainstorming. Whom did they imagine? Chennai Express was a movie going on, and you had Deepika Padukone and Shah Rukh Khan, and they looked at the practices of these film stars and got ideas. Now, a best practice has to deliver effective results, but a best practice has a shelf life because you get benchmarked. So you have to make a habit of working in creativity labs, working on your best practices to a next level. We call them next practices.
Thank you, Mr. Lulla, and it does answer some of the other questions which has come. I'll take one more question from one of the participants. The question is, do the companies need to first do internal benchmarking and then go for external benchmarking, or can both be done in parallel?
Theoretically, both can be done in parallel. But it is always more economical to start with internal benchmarking to get a hang of it. Take the case of the Aditya Birla Group. In the 90s, when Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla inherited the empire, he also inherited a whole lot of companies, each of which had a different name, but made the same products. Cement. He used a technique of harvesting the best practices from each of the 5 cement plants at that time, 7 cement plants. And he would use the reports on the best practices that have been harvested and do some internal benchmark for them. They learned from one another, and the byproduct was it improved the motivation of the teams that were making presentations to the other plants. Internal benchmarking is most certainly the most economical way to do it. The challenge in cross-industry benchmarking is, why should the other party part with information? So unless you have best practices that you want to trade with the other party, for example, your practices of purchase are a benchmark. And the recruitment practices of the company that you want to benchmark for has, I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. Your practices are purchasing, which are best practices, and you're willing to trade the recruitment practices of the other company. So there's a swap. There's no espionage of any kind. It's transparent. You sign a contract, what you will share and what you won't share. It works. But so long as you are confining the exchange to generic practices, organizations are run by over 80% generic practices. The proprietary practices are only 15-17%. That is what we get very protective about. So the challenge or the opportunity is to benchmark your generic practices, leadership, strategy, customer focus, employee focus, and so on.
Thank you, Mr. Lulla. At the cost of the time, I'm sure the participants are being benefited immensely. I'll take one more question. Is there a relationship between state of mind and creativity to bring about these best practices?
Yes. If you can be a child, your creativity will flow. And the creativity tools actually make you think like a child, unafraid, simple, and delivering effective results. Your child does it. We would like to bring the child out in you. So the state of mind is that of a child. Think simple.
Thank you, Mr. Lulla. I would like to thank all the participants for their questions, and I request Qimpro team to respond to all the unanswered questions with a link of the webinar. Well, the key takeaways as understood by me of best practices, that best practices are simple. Best practices are a result of right brain thinking. Best practices are efficient and effective. Best practices are benchmarked by organization within their industry as well as cross-industry. And creativity tools can help us design these best practices and deliver breakthrough results. I have personally been benefited by using some of these creativity tools at my own organization. And I would like to thank Mr. Lulla once again for his insights on this webinar today. Qimpro's next webinar is scheduled on 28th September. And the topic is improving supplier quality. Do mark it on your calendars. In my introduction today, I also mentioned about 75 quality fables authored by Mr. Lulla. For anyone who's interested, these books are available on qimpro.com/store. And in case you would like to write to Qimpro for any recommendation for a topic and how to improve the webinar experience, you can write to them at connect@qimpro.com. With that, I would like to thank all the participants on this webinar today and Mr. Lulla and Qimpro team once again. And we all look forward to meet you again on 28th of September.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you all.